You're listening to the Journey podcast. How can you find profound mental health healing by stepping off the beaten path? Stay tuned to find out more. This episode contains adult subject matter and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we focus on the journey of healing mental health from a personal perspective, emphasizing the significance of self-discovery and resilience. We highlight how understanding and compassion towards oneself can pave the way for emotional and psychological healing. Sharing insights into mindfulness, self-care, and the power of positive thinking, we delve into how these practices can support individuals in navigating their mental health challenges. Our guest shares her own journey of mental health healing, illustrating the transformative power of coaching and personal growth strategies. Through her narrative, we gain valuable lessons on overcoming obstacles with courage and finding peace within. This conversation inspires us to view mental health as a journey of empowerment, encouraging us to embrace self-healing practices that foster well-being and happiness. Jodie Gray is a trauma-informed mindset coach who has been through the healing journey herself. She has dived into some deep healing, enabling her to support others through their journey. She relates to many and provides a safe space for her clients to feel heard and held. Jodie knows the pain of living with trauma symptoms running the show. She also knows that despite this, life can take a turn and be lived in a way that feels incredible. Jodie believes that despite the cards you were dealt, you still deserve to feel the happiness and love that you already are. Here is my interview with Jodie Gray. Hi, Jodie. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because healing mental health is such a powerful topic for our conversation today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I do believe mental health is such an important topic to talk about, especially when we consider today's world. So I am excited that you're here. And would you like to share a little bit about yourself and your story, what you do and how you came to do that?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I could spend the next hour touching on all of those points, but I won't. I won't everything away in the first 2 minutes. So here we go. The reason I do what I do is because of the journey that I've had up until this point, and that continues. Now, like everyone, we all arrive, I believe, with some sort of constraint within us in terms of we enter this world, we have the parents that we have, and we have the trials and tribulations that we experience. And subsequently, we then manifest and maneuver ourselves through the world and accumulate more kind of traumas, events, situations, and circumstances that then create our story, I suppose. And therefore, mental health for me is huge because it's just such a loaded journey of experiences. And because of the journey that I've experienced, that's why I do what I do, which is supporting women through this journey, actually, that we call life. And that touches on mental health, that touches on spirituality and many other areas, really. That's why I do it, because of my own journey.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And what did your journey look like? Where did that journey start? And how did you begin to understand that there was something that you wanted or needed to heal? How did that come about for you?
Yeah, I love that question. I don't think I had one of those moments of the aha moment that many people speak about. I think there was an accumulation of events that happened that started to wake me up. And I come from a line of addiction. I was an addict myself. I was a teenage mum. So being 17 and having my daughter, and also going and kind of leading myself into the world of drugs, there's a lot in that. There's a lot of trauma. There's a big story behind this. And there's also many gifts within that. One of the gifts was the police came through the door one morning. We got busted. And I can remember my daughter was upstairs and I was downstairs and they wouldn't let me see her. And it took a little moment before I was able to go up and see her. And when I did, I just wanted to get her dressed and take her to nursery to get her out of the situation. And I can remember when they searched her clothes as I was getting her dressed, that was one moment where I thought, wow, maybe it's time that I did something different. It was amazing to have that. And there were multiple moments where I thought that. However, things didn't change straight away. And I think that's a really important point to touch on, because although we think a certain way, we're not able to do anything different unless we update both the mind and the body. And it's like a dance. I call it a dance, especially in my coaching sessions. We dance between the mind and the body, because the nervous system will update as we heal and vice versa. There were points, there were moments, but it wasn't just waking up one day thinking, oh, okay. And I certainly did wake up at one point and go, I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. That was another point.
Yeah, that sounds like a powerful realization that you had when you had to get your child out of the situation because you realized this is not how I want my child to grow up. This is not the kind of environment I want her to be in. So after this very powerful realization that you had, where did you start with the changes? You mentioned that it's difficult and it doesn't come from one day to another and it doesn't come right away. So where did you start? What were your starting points for making those changes?
Yeah. Now, I can only ever speak from personal experience, and I really want to stress that everybody is different. So what might work and fit with me might not be fitting for somebody else. But one thing I do remember doing is I remember feeling quite ambitious, and I've always had that in me. And I've always wanted, although and albeit driven by a feeling of lack and unworthiness, it definitely helped me to catapult me into thinking, okay, I need to find a change. I need to find something. So what I did is I decided, first of all, I was going to get a job. Then I realized that I left school at 15 with no qualifications and that it was going to be really difficult for me to get a job. And I hadn't really obviously realized that beforehand. I was in a bit of a predicament of kind of wanting to do something again and have feeling like the door sort of being slammed in my face again, like I can't do it, because obviously I turned up drunk to my exams and I didn't sit them, etc. What happened is I went to the job centre and they kind of said, what about cleaning? And what I decided to do is start a cleaning company, and I hand wrote 300 flyers and put them through doors. And I got a few clients out of that, and that really inspired me. So I then went on to build a cleaning company, which then I had like 20 odd staff that were working for me. I've jumped a little bit ahead here because in the meantime of that, what happened was, as a result of this, is I went back to the job centre, and I was very lucky. The lady in the job centre advised that I team up with the Prince's Trust, so a programme on the Prince's Trust, which is a charity in the UK, who support young people in some form of qualification, education, business. And that's what I did. And I committed to that. And it was very difficult because I was actually in a violent relationship at the time that was also driven by drugs. And it was very difficult, but I managed to commit. And as I committed to this, I found that I was seeing other people believing in me, even though I didn't believe in myself. It was that process. I put myself out there, or I made the first steps. I talk about this a lot. I do quite a lot of TikTok lives, and I talk about this a lot in those, is taking responsibility for ourselves. It's very difficult to do that when we're living in the kind of lack and the victim mindset. That's no judgment because I was there, but it really is a moment of reflection where we can go, actually, this is up to us. this is up to us to take the responsibility to start creating these changes. And as we can step into that, we can then find the resources that support that journey.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, because that can be a difficult step, is actually coming into the realization that we have to take responsibility if we want things to change. So what kind of things did you find helpful in that situation that supported you in taking that step and continuing on with the commitment that you had made? Because it would have been just as easy to go back to addiction, to go back to numbing yourself with different coping mechanisms. So what helped you in that situation to keep moving forward, even though you didn't believe in yourself?
Again, it's such an interesting question, because what helped me actually in that moment was my programming, which was the fact that I didn't believe in myself. By default, because I didn't, I needed to prove that I did and I was something. Although the programming was driven by trauma effectively and a limiting beliefs, many of them, like I said earlier, it was a catapult into a new environment, which then led to potential different perceptions and mindset. But this was very early on, and this was a change in lifestyle. I wouldn't say it was a change. It was part of my journey. I wouldn't necessarily, it was part of my actual healing journey. It was a change in environment. That's really what it was. And I think, again, coming back to everybody is so different. My mindset actually helped me to change my environment, which led me then to create a business. And my business then gave me the income that was required for me to be independent. And now, therefore, I don't need this person. So suddenly it's a snowball effect. And that started with me waking up one day saying, I think I'm going to get a job. So just that one thought that we can step into and be brave enough to persist with can just be enough for us. And if it is not necessarily that we're healing the mindset, is that we're changing the environment, which then leads us on to something else.
Yeah, there are many different things involved in making these permanent changes. And I think taking just a step at any given time in that direction of change, like you said, can have such a ripple effect going down the road and have so many outcomes that we might not even think of at the time that we're taking that step. You said that that was not truly your healing journey. So that was sort of the setting the stage for changing the environment and starting to move in a different direction. So how did you feel at some point about having to heal things? You obviously had experienced trauma, you had experienced addiction. So there were many things, I would imagine, to heal. But how and when did you decide that that was something that you needed to do?
Yes. I went on to have 2 more children. So I had 3 children. I got married. My marriage broke down alongside my business. That really, for me, was the beautiful gift of rebuilding and discovering who I wanted to be, who I wasn't, who I am, as a result of, at the time, feeling like everything was collapsing around me, was, like I say, the gift of a rebirth. Which that was the point when I woke up and decided that I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And I'd been to the doctors many times, and I'd done various things and taken various things that I thought would help. But then I realized, actually, I think I did 15 hours of CBT, and he said to me, I can't help you anymore, which was an interesting time because I'd tried the resources that were available and nothing was touching the spot. Nothing was hitting the spot for me. And it made me feel at the time that I was definitely broken. Like, if these people can't fix me, then I'm a bit screwed, really. Like, I'm in trouble here. But then what happened is that it felt like it got worse before it got better. But I continued because I just believed there was something. One thing I've always believed is that I've always believed that life doesn't have to feel this way. And it didn't matter how I felt. I just always knew it didn't have to. But I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I didn't know how that felt. So having that as a baseline really supported me in my journey of discovering. again, as I went through this journey, I did a health course and someone introduced me to somebody else, which then that was a huge turning point because I did a mastermind and then I met some incredible people on this mastermind. Some of them, I mean, they are lifelong friends. One of them is my coach, and he was and is incredible. And the amount of time and hours that I've spent with him. So that was the point where I was sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And again, it's those, like you mentioned before, it's those small steps that we don't realize at the time, but are and will create the ripples forever.
Yeah, that's a really great point that you're making there, because it can feel extremely overwhelming to have the answers to changing your entire life for the next 10 years and to know what to do. But when we break it down into these small little steps and we take this one day at a time, just one step at a time, what can I do today to just make one change that I can handle? Then that becomes more achievable. It becomes achievable for anyone. So that's a really, really important point, is that we don't overwhelm ourselves with having to have all the answers to everything that is happening. And how did you know to break it down into these smaller pieces? Did you have coaching, or you mentioned CBT, so you had some therapy as well? What helped you most in actually figuring all of this out?
I think it's an accumulation. I actually believe the answers are always inside of me. Everything that I was looking for was me, and everything I thought that I didn't have was not true. And everything I thought I had also wasn't true. That's been the learning. That for me has been a huge part of the healing. I think when we widen our scope and we think that there's somewhere to be, I've got to be somewhere, there's an end goal to this, I've got to feel so different to what I feel, and I've got to wake up every day, and healing means that I can be with everything, or I can do this, or I can experience this in this way. Whereas actually, when we kind of widen the scope in terms of being with ourselves, that shows us that we are everything we're seeking that we don't believe we are. So suddenly the answers are all inside of us. So being with ourselves in those times that are super difficult is where we will find the answer. So coming back to what you said, like, how did I kind of avoid the therapies? Yes, I did have CBT. If I'm totally honest, no, it didn't work. And it works for some, and that's brilliant. I had therapy for a year. What therapy did for me was it made me feel like it was okay to express myself in a safe space, although I never got the answers. Practicing with my system in expressing myself, that was huge. That was really, really huge. Each modality has something to offer. And I think it's really important to encompass as we feel necessary for our own evolution and our own growth. And which is why, coming back to what I said at the very beginning, what works for me may not work for somebody else, and it may not work in the same order, but just keep coming back to what you feel is resonating with you and in that moment.
Yeah, it's a very unique and individual journey for every single person. And you touched on your nervous system before, and that is one of the things that I find is actually a very common thread amongst individuals who have experienced trauma, who have experienced addiction and challenges like you have. How did you work with your nervous system to support your healing journey and to support the changes that you wanted to make?
I love that question. Thank you. Again, this is a dance, I believe, between the mind and body, and everyone has different ideas on this, and none of them are wrong. None of them are right. They're just perceptions. And the way and what worked for me was, I mean, I started yoga. I practice yoga every day abusively for myself. It wasn't for myself, it was for my ego and my trauma state. But what it did do is it introduced meditation and mindfulness and other things into my life, which again, it was another stepping stone in expanding my awareness to myself, for myself. How I regulate my nervous system today and what I've learned over the years is I will do probably most days a body scan, because what I believe about the nervous system is that, as we know, it's a database. It stores the trauma, it stores the information, and it will just react and respond accordingly to what data it wants to pull out, depending on the experience that we're in. For me, I know that this journey is a forever journey. It's a forever experience and exploration of myself. If that's the case, then how can I incorporate this support for my nervous system? Because it's not a case of, oh no, I've relapsed, I've had a panic attack. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just another layer that we can go and explore. For me, I do a body scan every day, probably, and I incorporate breath work as often as I feel necessary. The other thing that I do is I also shake. So I'll shake my hands, I'll sing very loudly in the car. But whilst I'm doing it, I'm present with myself and my body. What is my nervous system saying? How is it talking to me? What does it want to say? And how does it want to be heard? But also, like I said, the dance between the mind is, how is my mind responding to that? Because we are one. For me, the body is a reflection of the mind. That's how I like to kind of see us. Therefore, if my mind is going crazy, my body will naturally be doing the same.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that. And I was thinking, is that difficult to start listening to your body and your mind after a period of time where you may have had no trust in yourself, become disconnected from your body, or even have numbed yourself to certain feelings and experiences depending on the situation? Was that a difficult thing to learn and to trust that you could do that?
It was petrifying, absolutely petrifying. And I didn't know how to do that. That was really interesting. That was a learning in itself. I think it would be fair to highlight now that as children in today's society, especially in the UK, we are not given the time to connect with our bodies. From school age, we go to school, usually from secondary school, that's it. We don't want to know the mind-body connection. They haven't got time for that. It's not designed for that. It's designed to create pupils that are good at something, that can get good grades and make the schooling system come out looking wonderful. And hopefully the children can then go on and do what they want to do also. Those that aren't of that nature are really kind of, and also those that are, actually, let's not forget, it's not making a difference here. People can still struggle regardless. But we are really conditioned to just totally not listen to ourselves. From a very, very young age, we're taught that. And also, if we have parents that don't know how to do it for themselves, so therefore, when we're very young, our parents can't do it for themselves. So therefore, they're struggling to do that with us. This is also what we're learning as we go through life. And then we add our traumas on top of everything else, along with the conditioning that's happened throughout our lives and with society. It does feel like a very mashed up mess at points. Yes, it's really scary and really tricky to connect with ourselves, I believe, when we've been so disconnected. And again, I really feel strongly about this. This is the journey. There is absolutely no destination for this. How curious can we get with ourselves, with our body? And as I dived into my body, I know that there were certain things that came up. I had something that happened to me 20 years later. I was processing it. And some things came up and I was like, well, I've never experienced this in my body. Obviously, going through what I've been through, I felt safe enough to guide myself through that. This is only as a result of getting to myself. How do I respond? How do I respond when I start speaking to somebody? When I leave somebody, what am I saying to myself about the conversation I've just had? Our bodies and minds are always trying to protect us. Even by disconnecting, it's protecting.
Yeah. And there's something to be said to work into that trust and that connection again, and actually coming to an awareness that there are those two things. There is our mind, there's our body, and together they function as this whole being that makes us, that makes our spark, our essence. So yeah, a long, long journey, as you have said, and lifelong even, that we work on, that we experience, that we tune into sort of on a daily basis as we move through our lives. And I'm very glad that you found ways to explore that connection, that mind-body connection, and that you found ways to make that work for yourself and make that part of your healing. Now, do you bring all of that in when you work with your clients as well? Are these things that you help them discover, that you help them explore, these things that you work on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to incorporate both within my sessions. And I don't have this cookie cutter approach. I believe that everybody's different. We all have a different nervous system. We all have different experiences. Therefore, I am led by the client, but offer my knowledge. So, yes, is the answer to your question. And we will sit with ourselves and do some breath work and do some meditation if need be. I often have homework as well that I kind of give them, but also a lot of inner child work I find is really, really beneficial. For me, there were certain real key pivotal points when I did some inner child healing for me, because that's where we're really hurt with the memory and with the event. And I think there's a lot of powerful work that can be done by going back and revisiting our younger self.
Yeah, I agree with you. And lots of things to discover in that timeline as well. And things to find that we can heal and actually watch the transformation that happens after we discover and heal some of those things that happened. Yeah, so powerful. What would that look like if our listeners would like to work with you and they would like to connect with you? What kind of programs and services do you offer at the moment?
I have my one-to-ones, which can be found on my website. I also have a podcast called the Bite Size Healing Podcast, which, I just spend every Monday. I release a short episode with a little bit of bite-size healing, a little bit of something in your ears, on your walk, your coffee, where you can just sit and listen to. And if something resonates, then you can dive into it deeper by yourself or come to me. Those are the two that I'm offering at the moment.
Amazing. And we will be linking to all of Jodie's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with her, how you can book a one-on-one if you'd want to try that, and how you can find and subscribe to her podcast and get your own bite-sized healing every Monday from her. And this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed our journey into healing mental health, which has been an absolute journey of discovery and healing also for myself speaking with you today. So thank you so very much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom with us, Jodie. It has been a pleasure.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Jodie, and take care. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.